Nobody's going to be in the chat because they all expect they can come in late.
T-Webs is here. T-Webs is stoked. Yes, one of the Nectar
Kobe Bot is here.
Guys, we're punctual as always. This is how we always are.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wouldn't you say?
It's like Phish. We adhere to ticket time.
Phish had arrived precisely when he means to.
I want to tell everybody hello, first of all.
How
but
are
also,
you?
I'm good, but we have a guest, Steven Gripp, who's here. He has been on the podcast before. I tried to figure out when, Steven, and I couldn't. So anyway, welcome back.
Oh, hi. How is everybody doing today? Actually, to answer that question, I was talking to Brian about it. I think it was over 10 years ago when you first started.
Oh, wow. Really?
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for coming back. We're going to talk to Steven about this awesome project that he's been working on. And we're going to talk about the 3/12/88 show at Nectars, the original Gamehendge show. But first, we have some important business to take care of at the beginning. Well, the first thing is that Megan has been awarded a People's Choice Award for the draft that we did last week.
This is what happens when you let the people decide anything.
Oh my God, Jonathan, don't be sour that you totally lost to me. It's like
Megan, no, I feel pretty good about the way things worked out, so you can just enjoy your time.
Megan won the polls. She won the public opinion. She won everything on all the platforms across America. She swept the awards. And we're going to hear more about it in 1 second. But also congrats to Brian, who really should have won, given that he had the first pick and that he designed the draft and that the whole thing was his idea in the first place.
Super impressive the way
I just think that it goes to show, Brian, that you did not cheating. There was no collusion because.
It's true.
Well, and I kind of figured at the end, like, this is all about content. Like, this isn't about winning and losing. Congrats, Meg. But like, this is the content is the winner here. And nobody had traded.
Nice.
And so a trade is what will throw things into chaos and it will make people engaged. Like, ooh, is he actually going to take the pick? Jonathan did a serviceable job. Oh, no. I'm taking full blame here. But Jonathan did a serviceable job accepting my trade. It was an absolutely ridiculous trade, I think, for both sides. But in the end, the content won, and that's what matters.
Okay.
Actually, I think I won, but yeah, fair.
Megan, I just think let's just hear about Megan's victory in the words of our esteemed listeners. I feel like that's probably the best way to go about this.
Hey, Jeff Pod crew, Ben from the Pacific Northwest calling. I want to say great show and absolutely great last episode. Just want to tell you guys how much Megan crushed it. No ifs, ands, or buts. She is the GOAT of that episode with the picks. 97, 21, 2000, and whatever else she had was absolutely outstanding. Brian, rough trade. You guys are doing well. Have a great show again, and see you next time.
All right, we have three that are all in this vein, but slightly different. So I'm just going to keep going, and then we can discuss.
Love the pod, and just want to give a big shout out to Megan for winning the draft. She is the ultimate bomb.
Okay. All right. Last one.
Wait, that is the most punctual voicemail we've ever received.
I know.
Yeah.
When I saw that it was
Jonathan,
11 seconds,
that one.
I thought she got cut off or something. Okay. Here we go. One more. This is to someone who I hope is watching right now, or at least.
Hey guys, this is Brian from the Attendance Bias podcast. Big listener, big fan, obviously, of HF Pod. About what I thought about the draft episode, it very oddly made me realize that I'm turning into my father, because when I was growing up, when I was really little in the mid 80s, early 90s, I would watch Knicks games with my dad, and my dad would yell at Patrick Ewing, telling him what to do. And when I was like 7 or 8, I would say to my dad, Patrick Ewing can't hear you. Stop yelling. And then when I was watching you guys draft the different years of Phish, I started yelling at you. Take 1998. It's still on the board. Oh, come on. 1989 isn't that good. And I realized I had no one to yell at me and tell me that you couldn't hear me. So I'm turning into my father. Thanks a lot, HF Pod.
I'd like to point out that in the chat here, that same person notes that he voted for Jonathan.
Yeah, he was one of your 10 votes. It's amazing.
That's just cold. It's like
Oh
cold.
my god.
I'm just kidding.
I-
I'm just kidding. I'm gonna stop, just like relishing in this someday. But it's just a win that nobody saw coming, right? Even me. I didn't see this coming.
Because
Well,
94 and 95 are
preparation.
better than 97.
you
So
like
everybody
you like
else,
the years that are pop cultural years, like people, the
Hmm.
masses love them,
I'm basic. Is that what you're saying?
RJ RJ likes the years that are very difficult to appreciate and rough around the
Right.
edges. And let's be honest, that makes him a better
You're
Phish fan than everyone else.
Yeah.
It's true.
Megan
It's
Megan
true.
won fair and square. I also want to say, Brian, thank you for pushing us to do the episode. We're going to do more
Yeah.
drafts. We're already talking about our next drafts, but if you have ideas, suggestions, send them to us. As always, leave us a voicemail. It's 484-416-0488. I just was reminded today of, has anyone ever read or listened to Child's Christmas in Wales, the poem by Dylan Thomas?
Yes.
There's
Not
a
in
line
this
in it.
century.
There's a line in it where he says, "I can never remember whether it snowed for 6 days and 6 nights when I was 12, or whether it snowed for 12 days and 12 nights when I was 6." And this is how I feel right now.
That's
and I
beautiful.
just want to tell you guys, I walk outside. Every time I walk outside, I'm like, is this real? I don't even know if my kids go to school anymore. So that's kind of like the reality that I'm living in here. And I think people listening on the East Coast understand that. But hopefully
People
they,
in the Pacific Northwest understand it too.
yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
It's all
It's
over.
like a snow globe outside. It's kind of amazing.
It's all over.
I'll just relate with you that it was so cold last weekend that my car battery on my 3-year-old car froze, and I had to go to the car dealership to get a new car battery. And I then had to pick my son up on the other side of town from a play date and bring him home. And as I was picking him up, we got a notification from the school that there was no school the next day. And the whole drive home, he was like, "Sweet 4-day weekend. My life is awesome." And in my head, I was like, "My God, 4-day weekend. My life sucks."
Yep.
Yeah.
Which means
So
I'm turning
true.
into my father because
Yeah.
he felt that way as well.
Yep. I pretty much told my kids that last night. I was like, if you have a snow day tomorrow, I'm going to be in a bad mood, just so you guys know. But
Just get ready. Well, just
good
come to
luck.
New York. We never have snow days here because
know.
no matter what, somehow the streets are always clear here. So you can always get to work. It's very annoying as a teacher.
things can happen. Okay, we're going to get into the episode. There's 2 quick things I have to say. One is that there's a new band playing at Nectars, which we're going to talk about Nectars today. There's a new band playing at Nectars March 1st and 2nd. They're called Reprise. They are going to basically cover full Phish shows from history. So March 1st and March 2nd will be 2 different shows that this band of amazing musicians are going to cover. If you go to live@nectars.com, you can get tickets if you're in the area or want to be in the area. Many people who listen to the show have seen at least some of these guys play together before, and it's going to be really fun. And lastly, the Phish Studies Conference, phishstudies.net. I haven't told any of you guys yet, but we might be trying to help them out with it this year in some way, shape, or form. So we'll see what happens. Okay. All that to say, welcome back, Steven, to the show.
Good to be here. It's good to see your beautiful faces. I seriously,
I can't believe it's
surreal.
I can't believe it's been 10 years since you've been on the show. I thought
has.
it was like,
Yeah.
2019 or something. But
Yeah, I mean, we've chatted here and there, but like I haven't done any podcasting or any of that stuff since back in the day.
amazing.
The Walter Holland years,
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh, man.
those are the years.
right?
My God.
Great
I
years.
was around then. I
Yeah.
remember that.
Yeah.
Wax Banks, he's the man.
Yes.
Steven, we're going to talk about this 3/12/88 show because it's timely given the Gamehendge New Year's Eve show. But first, you've been working on a project for a long time, and you're going to show it to us, but also can you just tell us first what the project is, where the idea came from, and what you ended up doing?
Yeah. So real quick, 10 years ago, I was an English teacher in Austin, and I was teaching this book, Night, by Elie Wiesel. And at that time, Google came out with this service called Google Tours. And what you could do is you could put together different places and create a tour where people can follow along. So I created the tour of the book. So you could follow Elie's place all over around, through Europe and through the concentration camps, kind of engaging for the students. And I had a brain thing where it's like, that would be really cool to do with a Phish tour, like just see where the Phish performed. So I started doing it, and then Google Tours shut it down. So I'm like, oh, that stinks. So fast forward to about 3 years ago, they revamped Google Earth. They had all these different features and all these different things. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to pick it up again. So this has been a project I've been working on on and off for about 3 years, but it really picked up because I got a new job, because I was working from home. So I had more time to like put into the project. And as I was finishing it up, it was coming close to the 40-year anniversary. And as I was putting it together, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to let the boys know. Like, I think this would be really cool to see like every single Phish show, where they performed. And I even added links to clicking on the show review, and you're able to hear the audio. So I'm like, all right, let's do this. So I put it together, and now I'm here to show you like what it is. And I really want to see like people use it and, kind of use it in their own fashion, like see like the neighborhood they performed or go to their show that they went to and just kind of like interact with it.
Awesome.
That's
I
wild.
love it. I'm
it's
I'm a
really cool.
huge map guy, and so like it's one thing to
No
have
way.
huge.
No
It's one thing to
way.
have.
I would never
Brian, the
guess that.
cartographer.
It's one thing to have the Farmer's Almanac, the Phish Companion, and like be able to go through in chronological order, Phish.net, where you can like search any show based on whatever filter you want to set. But to like actually look at the way a tour or a year was actually like constructed on this map, it's fascinating.
Yeah, well, believe it or not, I did a lot of nerding out with this project. Like when I was putting it together, I really made an effort to listen to all the Nectar shows. If you go into the archives, you can see that there's not a lot of recordings when they were at Nectars, and they had a residency there. So I really wanted to get a feel of like their existence down at 1987, when they spent most of their time at Nectars. So I'd catch all their shows, I'd listen to them, and I'd hear like their lab work, their pieces of Fluffhead or, No Dogs Allowed. And you hear all these elements of these songs being put together, and they're performing them live. And it was really cool that they just did it in this city. And then you could also see as we move on to different shows that they kind of got gigs outside of Burlington. And it was just so much fun just kind of nerding out to see how the cultivation of the band as they progress through their career.
One of the coolest things for me was looking at the early 90s when they were just touring so much and just pulling up that and watching all of the dots just like proliferate on the screen and just seeing like how hard they were working. It was like it's actual proof of how hard they're working and how many shows they were playing. It's wild. And I loved how you put like the visuals in there and the links to articles about it. It's great, super interactive, like you were saying.
Yeah, I mean, Google Earth is pretty easy to use, and it is an overwhelming project. And as we go into it, you'll see that I put in different, I didn't put everything in one link. I mean, all 2,000 plus shows, that would be too much. So I kind of put it together by theme, so you can like kind of mess around that particular era and then just kind of jump around. But it was fun, like talking about what you're talking about. My fiance is from Cleveland, and we sat and listened to a show that they did in '91. In the dugout in Athens, Ohio, where she went. And there's a picture of them there, and they're like this tiny little bar, and there's shiplap in the background. You can see Trey just like, what am I doing in this tiny bar, But they're just pushing through. It was just so much fun and you're like, Phish played in Athens, Ohio? I'm like, yeah, back then they were playing every day, all across America.
Yeah,
it's really cool.
I liked looking at just the era and seeing everything spread out. And I didn't have enough time, and I'm really looking forward to going back and looking at some of the old spots that I saw them at in 30 years ago or whatever now. So
yeah,
that's so cool.
Yeah. Well, I will put out one disclaimer here that this work is my own. So there's been no like experts or like any Phish fans that are, helping me out. I did this all on my own. So if there's like one particular show, like back in the early 80s, and especially, and I'll call myself out, like the festivals, like Pete's Fabulous Phish Festival and 721 that you guys talked about, there's no coordinates, there's no record of any where that place was. So I'm like, all right. So I kind of read some reviews and I try to see like where his house might be. And I kind of did some 311s. Don't tell, I kind of like called and see like, hey, did this person live there? Yeah. So it was a lot. It was a lot of fun just putting this together. And what I'm most excited about now is just seeing where it goes from here. Like, are people going to use it? Are people going to, say this is crazy how you have everything in front of you. So it'll be exciting to see how active it is.
That is wild. Go ahead, Brian.
Well, I was just going to say, you and I were talking before we went live about how you listened to some of these shows while you were going through it, and you were hearing kind of the build up to some of the big shows and where sound was evolving and sound was developing. We have a question here from friend of the pod, a fellow Phish nerd, I say in the most kind and loving way possible. Justin Bruce, cool project. Any super wacky tour routings from 1.0 that jumped out at you? For example, Fall 94's dip to Missouri from the upper Midwest before going out to Montana comes to mind. Was there anything for you that, like, just as you looked at it on the map, you were like, why would they route this way, or how this is fascinating that it came out this way?
Yes, that's a great question. So in 1990, they did 2 cross-country tours. One was because they wanted to get back to Colorado. They had success in Colorado. So 1990, they went back to Colorado. So there's one tour where they went to through the Midwest, like through the North. So like Michigan, Wisconsin, they did some bars there. But my favorite one that really stuck out was the kind of the fall of 1990. They went to the Southwest. So if I'm not mistaken, they did Tipitina's out there. They did a really small bar in Houston that I could not find. It wasn't even on the map. Like it was, the building was condemned, and I think it was called the Rhythm Room in Houston. And I might be getting my Houston and Dallas bars mixed up. But what was so fascinating to me was, how did they get these gigs? Like they're already planning their big shows, and they were doing theaters already in Colorado in 1990. So I'm like, they want to make some stops along the way. How did they get these gigs? How did they get a tiny little room in Houston, Texas that no one goes to? They must have performed to like 10 people, but they made the stop there because they knew they had to get their music down. They could not go without playing, and they wanted to make sure that their music was tight. So that was probably the one that stuck out the most to me, is just, okay, this is their first venture out of the East Coast. They're going toward the West Coast because they were already touring with Widespread Panic in early 1990. So like just venturing out to the West Coast was to get to Colorado was the one that stuck out to me.
It's very cool.
That's wild. Okay, well, before we talk about the Gamehendge show, maybe we can go to Nectars at some point. But Steven, I'm going to add this visual here. Can you just show us, like, I don't know where we are here, and I'll try to narrate for the people listening after the fact. But show us how this works for the people watching.
Okay, so there are links, and they're labeled these same things: Phish 1983, 86, and we can post the links on any page. They're already hyperlinked, so. When you click on a link, I'm just going to click on the first one. So this is Phish 1983 86. Okay. So this pops up, and you click on the slideshow, and this is the start of Phish 1983 86. And what tour? You have albums that they did during that time. I put podcasts that kind of talk about that era. I have books that I've read that I thought would be very helpful to this era, and then some other blogs and vlogs. And I've done those throughout all the different ones. I've added them to each era. So what you can do is you can you go to table of contents, and you can jump down to any show here. Or what I always like to do is just choose a show, and you can go through the slideshow and just hop from show to show. So you're actually going on tour. So I'll just go to the first show they've ever done, which I believe is the Harris Mills Cafeteria, and there it is. That's where their first show took place.
That's so wild.
Awesome.
And
nice.
So we see the cafeteria.
Is that wild?
Listening.
Yeah. So that's where their first show took place. Yeah. So that's their first show, and over here, I have links. So you click on the date, and that is the review of the show, so you can read about it. And I'm just closing it out just for speed. And then you click on the actual venue, and it brings up the audio if there is an audio, so you can listen to it.
Oh, that's Scarlet Fire, right?
Yes, correct. And so I also, if there's anything, and this is thanks to you guys because you guys helped me with my journey, I put down any type of episode that talked about that particular show in the box here, so you can click on that.
Oh man,
and it takes you to you can listen to that show. So I kind of wanted to make it like super interactive for any Phish fan. So if you just want to listen to it or read it, or if you're like, you really want to know more about it, you can listen to the podcast of that particular show. So one more thing before we can jump to wherever you want to jump. If you click on the next arrow, it jumps on to the next show. And the next show was over here in their dormitory. And this was right before Trey was suspended. So then you go to the next show and it jumps over to 10-384. And this is the first show that they actually performed with Phish. So you can click on the review here. And this is 1023 Grand or 69 Grant Street, where they actually, like Mike and Trey, started playing shows in front of people. Wow. And then let's say you want to jump to a show. Let's jump to their first show, Together as Phish, which is at Nectars at 12184. I put a couple pictures here that you can look at. So these are pictures from the show. And actually, I found a poster of the show there to kind of reminisce. God. Yeah.
That's so cool. I haven't seen that poster before.
And it's every single show from beginning to end is here. Yeah.
Wow.
Massive.
Steven, that is amazing.
I want to show you one more cool thing since we're nerding out real quick before we go to questions. Okay, so one cool thing. This is my favorite thing that I just like relished in. So, and this is the era that we're going to work on anyways. But this is 87 to 90. And sometimes because the thing is so overwhelming, you just have to refresh. I'm just going to refresh real quick. But what I really, really loved about doing this was I went to find different YouTube clips of shows. I could not put all the clips of all the shows in every single.
There's a lot of them out there.
Era.
Yeah, that's a lot.
A show that had at least show is the 5/20/87 show at the ranch.
Oh yeah.
So the cool thing about it is I found the actual ranch that they performed at.
Oh my
okay, so here's the ranch. And what you can do is I put you can click on the YouTube clip and there it is. Like you can actually like watch, I mean, we'll go past commercials. But like you can watch the show at the freaking place. Like, wow. Look at it. That's them. We are there. Yeah. Like watching the show. This is in the backyard right there. Like that is, if I can't say this is the nerdiest thing I've ever done in my life, this is absolutely it. Because I just sat and watched the show. Yeah, I don't have the volume on, but I just sat and watched them play. And I'm like, this is where I'm at, man. This is right here. This is where this is like battlefields, you know? It's it was really cool. All right.
Amazing.
That's enough for me. All right.
No, that's super cool,
great.
Steven.
Wow.
Really cool.
Yeah. Round of applause for you, man. This is like one
Real.
undertaking. Okay. I think everyone here on this call understands how much you can nerd out on this band, but also how exhausting and time consuming that can be from time to time. And you put in the work. This is like seeing this go into the UVM campus and go right up to the cafeteria and then shift down the way that you would in Google Earth. It's fascinating.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. And I think that once people start, messing around with it, they're going to be like, man, this is a really crazy project, because it was a labor of love, no doubt. But it was so much fun doing it because I got to see like my favorite band grow. I got to see like the choices that they make and the experiences they had, and you get to listen to the shows, and it was so much fun to do. And I'm glad I got to finish it at this time.
How did you decide what you were going to listen to? I feel like it was this similar thing how we did 40 for 40, right? We went through the band's evolution, and it was really hard every year to decide like what you were going to listen to. Was it just, you just kind of chose something based like, oh, I've never heard this before. Oh, I'm curious about this venue and I want to hear this show. Or was there any kind of system to what you listened to as you were going through it? I'm just curious about that.
So, there was a lot of live Phish releases that I listened to. So when I started putting the live Phish links on there, because I wanted the soundboards on the links.
Yeah.
So when I got to a live Phish release, I would listen to it and then kind of see how that sounded, like where they were at. But there was a couple that I haven't heard in a while, and there's a couple that I didn't hear at all. Like for example, my first show was 96, 11/2/96. So I've listened to 97, backwards and forwards, So anytime I would talk about the greatest year ever, it's 97. And then Brian and I were talking about, historically speaking, maybe 95 was the best. But I really paused for a while and listened to fall 94 shows.
Yes. Yes.
I really was fascinated with how tight they were, how fast they were, and how their improvisation was so mechanical and maniacal. Like it was just
maniacal was a great word.
They were mind readers, and they were just like, I know, and I'm not trying to kiss RJ's butt because I know his favorite show is 12/29/94. Like that was, everything that happened in fall 94 led up to that show, but it was just like, it wasn't a bunch of, clowns running around, which was a lot of 93. Like they were doing a lot of experimentation in 93. And that was another story too. It was a lot of fun, but for a while, it was hard to listen to 93 shows on audio because it was just they're just so experimental. It's like you're seeing the cutting board, you want to eat the sandwich. You don't want to see how it's made. But 94 was such a fantastic year because their improvisation, they were being able to communicate, and they had the audience chiming in, with crowds and stuff. And it was just unbelievable how tight they were. And I'm like, I can't believe the world is not listening to us. And eventually they did.
Well, I think about that too. When I saw your project, I looked up my first show because of course you would. And it was 11/14/94. And there's a Bowie in there that's just like you're saying. It's wild, it's crazy. It's not 12/29, but it is totally
a good one,
crazy and exciting. And that was my first show. And there was this energy in fall 94, and Jonathan knows it's why he picked it for his draft. But that year, just that fall 94 is just, it's magic. It was the energy in the rooms that they were playing was off the charts. People were so excited. It felt brand new. I think it was so exciting.
Yeah. And one of the exciting things about going through this project is that you can connect it to how they're playing now. Like they are really, really like fast and tight now, like they're really performing, especially having such a library of music, like they can play whatever they want, and for them to be that strong of a performance, especially at this age. But it reminded me of how they were sounding back in there. They were taking more chances, but the chances it was high risk, high reward, back then, and it's happening now, which is really exciting to see.
Well, I'm excited to use this. You brought it up, so I'm going to say I'm excited to go back to Providence, where I haven't been since 12/29/94, and find the parking garages where I got lost before the show.
Oh, that's a good story. You've told that on the pod. I love that story.
And just try to see how different it is now.
Yeah.
So, Steven, can I just ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Just because I want people to know when we share this, should I share the year by year links that you sent me so that people can? Okay, cool.
What I'll do is I'll email it again, and I hyperlinked it so it could just have all of the it's easy to click on and whatnot.
Cool. Cool.
See how I motioned with the click with the finger, so that way it's that easy. But what I think what's going to be great with this experience is that there's different ways that you can interact through Google Earth. So like after I finished, what I would do is I would go from I'd hover over city to city and see all the different shows that happened, especially if you go, this might be advanced, but if you go toward the Southwest, like in New Mexico and Arizona, there are some hidden gems out there that are just absolutely fantastic shows that no one really talks about because as they know, you snooze, you lose. I really felt developed out in the Southwest because they were just killing it out there.
4892 Albuquerque, David Bowie, one of the big highlights of that month. It's one of those things you have to kind of listen, track a tour to find that sort of stuff.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And it was talking about, going through the Southwest, but overall, I could sit here and talk about this ad nauseum about every different experience I had through the adventure of tracking this. And it was I'm just glad we could share it and, have everybody interact with it.
question here: Do you get it? Did you get any sense of how many venues are no more, or ones that were small
Oh yeah,
and now
that
big?
so
Yeah, what was that like?
it was so I would say over the 2000 shows, I would say probably about 10% of the buildings have been condemned. So like a lot of the small clubs are now they have apartment complexes, or there's just an open field. Like the Fort Ram Club, I believe in 1990 when they went out to Colorado the second time, there's nothing out there. I searched for the Fort Ram Club, and what a lot of my research, what I would do is I would read the newspaper that was released during that time. You can get to the articles and you can see like, all right, who's performing at the Fort Ram nightclub? And I try and find addresses. And then I was able to find the address, and there's no more building there. So yeah, to answer that question, there's about 10% of the buildings are something else, or the building's no longer there.
We had another question just before we jump to Gamehenge from Brian over at Attendance Bias. Did you notice any surprising patterns developing as the band became more and more successful, and the venues and cities get kind of culled out into just, the standard routes that they take?
Yeah. So a lot of the patterns that I saw develop that jumped out to me were when, and we're probably going to talk more about this when we talk about this show, was after 3/12/88 with John Paluska, when they met John Paluska. There's an article out there. I read it and I can't find it, but after they come back from Colorado, they start to perform in the Boston area. They have Fort Molly's, a couple shows in Fort Molly's. They do a couple shows at Sheehan's. But from there, you could see the John Paluska influence, that they start to get these random shows popping out in different areas and then just blowing the audience's minds away, where you have this fall of 88 where they're doing all these little tiny shows in this region, followed with their introductory following in Boston, that when you come now to 89, when they have the famous Paradise show, and you have this like, oh, they can't sell it here, and it sells out. Like from the beginning of 89, you start to really see a development in more shows, especially in the Boston area, in the Augusta, in Portland and Maine. Like 89 is really, they're focusing on performing. They're not focusing on identity yet. They're really focusing on performances and just getting out there and getting gigs in that area. So really after that show is where you really start to see a cultivation of Phish outside of the Vermont area.
Such a cool moment.
Yeah. Well, I think so we'll obviously share all these links, Steven, and congrats on getting this done.
Seriously.
And for doing it. Really awesome. I think when we originally started talking, we were thinking, we might as well talk about this this Gamehendge show, given that, we just had Gamehendge, and we're going to go from Madison Square Garden back to Nectars for this 3/12/88. Where should we start? I mean, I guess I can just start by saying this is the first known live Gamehendge with the narration between songs. First and almost last version of Jump Monk, and some more stuff happened. But is there anything we need to know to set the stage, Steven, in terms of this show? Like versus just thinking about it in the number of shows they played at Nectars and where this falls, like any thoughts on that based on what you did?
Yes. So the cool thing about talking about this show is, one, yes, it is the Gamehendge, the first Gamehendge ever performed. And then convincing the band that they were going to perform Gamehendge, because there, as you know, in history, like there was a little bit of pushback on performing Gamehendge songs, but Page then relented and said, you know what, this is Phish, this is what we do. So not only is the Gamehendge performance important, but that night they went to a Frank Zappa show, and they, being a huge Zappa fan, I really feel, and this is just me nerding out, I really feel that based on their own historical record of saying when they go see shows, it influences their own music. I really feel that going to see that Zappa show, that really cracked the eggshell mind of the performers and saying, look, we've been playing for 2 years, and we are a cover band. We are experimental, performance-based rock band. We do classic rock. We do all this stuff. I really feel that we can develop this sound into something very, very instrumental and very, very monumental. So after seeing that show, the other sets are unrecorded, but I really feel like they probably put on a performance that really transformed what Phish was going to be. Because after that show, if you look at those other shows, you start to see patterns in where songs are placed. You start to see where there's more development in their songs, more experimentation in their songs. I mean, they're not doing Jam 2.0s yet, but they're really starting to let go of those particular, like David Bowie starts, not David Bowie, YM starts to have a little bit of more experimental jam to it. There's more of their music in there. So I just feel like this show is very important for their fan base and for their own sound, because as they, and I'm sorry, I'm rambling, I'll wrap this up. But as they perform that show, you see a couple, they already have a residency in Nectars. They already are performing at Hunts. They just start their regular performances at the front. They start to realize, okay, we have something here. What are we going to do with it? And that's where they get the invitation to go to Colorado. So when they go to Colorado in '88 and they realize, all right, no one's out here to see us, let's just start to develop our sound. So listening to Colorado '88 just had such a more magical moment for me, because they're not just performing, they're starting to put together a repertoire that is going to last them for the remainder of their careers and start to build a foundation for how Phish is going to be performing henceforth. And that's what made this show so magical for me, is because I feel like that is what happened to them going on after the show.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those signposts where everything kind of begins to pivot. They are a cover band with some interesting originals, and here they are, and you hear it really clearly in this set, but they are Phish, and they are becoming the band. And as you say, this is the repertoire they're building that will lead them into the future, like the next 7 years to one of the next big signposts. There's a couple other signposts on the way, but of like 12/31/95, they lay down that post again, and they have another big pivot after that.
Yeah.
This is that path. It's beginning right here.
Yeah.
And
you hear in this set, like, to your point, to both your points, like Trey keeps teasing fans that he's going to play Iculus, and that is a mid 90s to present day like Treyism and like Fishism of like, you're never going to catch Iculus, and then, oh my god, you finally got an Iculus. It's like things, it's a song people chase forever, and they don't play it in this set, and yet the whole time it's almost as though Trey is messaging to anyone complaining that Iculus wasn't played on New Year's Eve 2023, like, we're going to reference him, but we're not actually going to play the song. And he just like keeps holding that over everyone's head. That combined with what you're talking about, the kind of coalescing of, these are the songs that are going to carry us forward. These are the songs that are going to kind of sit by the side. And you almost look through this, Tila has this bridge in this performance that is going to go away fairly soon. McGrupp is a song that is semi-rare throughout their history. It's kind of a special, shows up 2 to maybe 3 times a year. Forbin's Mockingbird is going to start to fall away, but like songs like Wilson, Lizards, Antelope, Possum, these are these songs that are going to be kind of like the bedrock of the band as they're going forward. And there are others around there, but like you start to see where Gamehendge kind of pushes and pulls on the past and like one idea of where Phish could go, but also some of the songs in there are going to break away and they're going to guide them as they go forward.
Yeah.
I mean, McGrupp is kind of a constant until 1990. I just want to
that's a good point.
Amend that. He was played almost
Yeah.
every night in 88, 89, and then 90 is played 6 times or something. It's like big drop off.
One thing that was really interesting to me when I was looking at is this year 29 songs are going to debut, and if you look at the average for this show, it's 1988, right? This show is basically a set of new music. There's 3 debuts, and then a handful of the songs have been played 2 or 3 times. Some have been played like 10, 12 times, but this is really new music, and it's really challenging music too. And this is a band that's been around for 5 years. Paige's only been in the band for 3 years. This is the first year that they're going to become full-time musicians. They have their first paying gig outside of Vermont. This is a new band, and they're playing so much of their own music, like you've all been saying. And I think it's such an accomplishment, and it's so exciting that they start with this jazz tune, this like Mingus tune that is just, it kind of, I don't know, it's interesting that they chose to start the show with that, because it kind of launches them into this. I mean, they played a lot of jazz back then, and I'm just here to say, make Phish jazzy again, please. But because this is so beautiful and I love it so much. And, part of this song, he's used part of the chord progression in Stash, but I love that this is the launching pad kind of pre-Gamehendge, and then they go into Gamehendge. It's just so great. I wish we knew what the other sets from the show were, but I loved listening to this and thinking about this band that, like you're saying, Brian, talks to their audience and already has this relationship. Trey at one point is like, Steve, the song about Iculus. Yeah. And he's like playing with them, and they're already developing that rapport with the audience and having so much fun. And how exciting it is for them that they're playing all this music that is super challenging. Also, it's challenging to play in a bar. Like, I love during the narration how you can hear the background music or like the other band that's playing. There's like music playing in the background. And it's just, you realize they're not playing this to like a rapt audience that's being totally silent and, adoring like Phish plays to now. They're playing this in like Nectars, where people are kind of moving around and milling around, and to play music that's pretty challenging. And I'm sure Zappa was an influence on them in this kind of idea, but it's really a huge risk.
I think they had someone playing at Metronome. They must have. I think that's what we're hearing. Because
during the show.
Yeah, you can hear it. It's like quiet. It probably wasn't like a DJ set, but
right.
There was something going on. But yeah, I agree with you, Megan. I just want to share this comment from Jeff Katz, who's watching, who's proposing a new way of thinking about Phish eras. He said this is the real 1.0, and everything from 91 on is 2.0, which I guess makes us in like maybe 9.7 or something. So that's fine.
Oh my God, if I'm going to lose my 1.0 status, that's really going to hurt.
Trey always thinks about like 2.0 beginning much different time than we do. I think he thinks of it as being after Big Cypress or something like that. I can't remember his tailing of it. But anyways, it's all arbitrary. None of it matters. Except that Brian is a 2.0 noob.
Gross.
Forever proud.
I want to just tell you guys, I would go, after listening to this, I wanted to go on Fishnet and rank and rate it as a 5 out of 5, but I can't because you're not allowed to rate things.
No,
Fishnet
we lost that privilege.
Yeah,
still offline. Huge controversy and a huge, just a big deal overall. Okay,
when are we getting those back? Like, when have we been punished enough? Like,
we're not.
What is the punishment?
Phish.net removed voting first in 2024. Who could be next?
Yeah,
who could be
exactly.
Did it?
Yeah,
did it?
Yeah.
Here he comes. Yeah.
So Jump Monk, and I do agree, Megan. Jump Monk's the opener. It doesn't make sense why they don't play jazz, and like I don't know if they don't want to or they're just messing with us, but it'd be really great if they did again.
Well, and this one doesn't sound charted. It sounds like more of a jam in a really cool way. This appears once more, 732 shows later, 424.94 in the middle of Bathtub Gin. If you have not listened to that show, I plead with you to drop everything. The David Bowie from that show. Steven here referenced Rob Mitchum, who writes the great Phish essays Substack, which will probably be moving because fuck Substack. But he talks about this show and that David Bowie, as he calls it, the shift, the turn in Phish history, where they, you talked, Stephen, about all these like little moments that you learned about along the way, like type 2 jamming comes in on that David Bowie in a really big way. But back to Nectars, very, very cool that they start. I can't believe this is only one of 2 performances of Jump Monk.
Yeah. Well, to talk about Nectars real quick. So when they were performing, this is 1986. They had 2 places they played. They played at Hunt's and they played at Finbar's. So they had a couple shows at Hunt's, and what happened was, and this is just based on research, I could be just reading this from wrong, but they would perform upstairs in Nectars in the early 80s. It wasn't until 86 where Nectar brought the music downstairs and they started performing downstairs. So, and I think they had 2 shows, but he took out the upstairs and just made it only downstairs. I don't know the details of that, but Phish really started, they were welcomed into Nectars in November of 86. And then they had this is what I believe. I think they created a residency for Phish, because if you look at the archives, there's no recordings of it, but they performed Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday for like, at least twice a week or twice a month in all of 87. And if you read of this show, someone threw like a Phish shirt on the stage at Frank Zappa, and Frank Zappa held it up. So Phish was very, very well known in the Burlington area in 87. And I feel like having this show and people talking about how the significance of it and the sound of it, I think that's why I'm enjoying talking about this show, but also the importance of Nectars, especially in 87, because they just worked on all their music in Nectars that whole year.
Yeah, there's shows like 4/29/87, I think, that's like Reset Monsters that really showcases what they were doing. I mean, it's crazy. Like, you think about all like really great successful bands have their own version of Nectars, where like you get the chance, like you talk about hearing other music during this show, where you really have to prove yourself and you have to hold an audience on a night-to-night basis. And a lot of what we hear structurally that works within Phish shows today is all captured back then.
Yeah, agreed.
So, what else? What did you guys think of the story, the narration? We have McGrupp into Lizards, into Tila, the first known performance of Tila, Wilson into AC/DC, into Colonel Forbins, into Fly Famous Mockingbird, Sloth, Possum, Antelope. What were your thoughts going back to this now, especially after hearing the New Year's Eve version? Just brief thoughts from everybody. Jonathan, what you start?
It's funny how well you think Trey ought to know this story, but at the same time, he always seems like he's kind of making it up.
Totally.
And it's great. I like the details, though, about Aaron Wolf's son is killed by the AC/DC bag, and that's what made him a revolutionary. And it's all different. Like I said when we talked about the MSG show, I feel like they all exist in like a multiverse version of Gamehendge Extended Universe. So they're all valid and all different and all fun. And this one is no exception. I just like the young energy. I love the version of Tila on this. I like the old Tila a lot. Not that I dislike what Tila became, but I like the distinct difference. And I want to say about Jump Monk.
Jonathan, can I just say real quick on Tila? What I wrote down was, I bet Trey thought at this moment this was a really good idea to add Paige to the band.
Right. He was like, I'm
so
glad I have Paige here.
Totally.
Yeah.
100%. 100%.
I just wanted to say about Jump Monk that Bad Hats continue to play Jump Monk after this, but probably the woefully underdocumented Johnny B. Fishman Jazz Ensemble probably played it too. But at least we have Stash.
You love to say that, ensemble.
I do. It's true.
It's a good one. Brian, what are your thoughts going back?
I'm really going to show my noob status here. You guys ready?
You never heard of Gamehendge until this?
Come on. Well, actually, two things, because there was one really funny realization. The big takeaway was I really liked the new structure and the new narration. I felt like listening back to this, it kind of just like jumps you through it. And there's a lot of like, and, you think about the narration in this compared to the one from Great Woods, and like there's narration tracks on the live Phish are like 3 and 4 minutes where Trey is like going into really descriptive detail. And by that point, to Jonathan's point, he like knows what the story is. But the structure that they presented on New Year's Eve was slightly different and gave you a little bit more backstory, and it gave you kind of a different way into understanding Mr. Palmer, understanding Wilson, understanding Tila, and it kind of peaks rather than with this great act of valor happening, and then Aaron Wolf steals the book and becomes evil, and that's like this repetitive cycle that doesn't happen in the new one. It all ends on a happier note, and it they really overcome the challenges. And so I kind of thought about how much I liked the new version, But the other
Love and
thing I
Light.
didn't realize, the Love and Light. Yeah, that's so modern Trey.
Till the volcano kills them all.
Yeah, right.
Right.
And then it all just like goes back to
Yeah.
It all melts.
And then we all become clear. Yeah.
But one thing I didn't realize, and I think that this really negates everything RJB has said about this song throughout his entire podcasting career, is at the end of The Sloth, Trey says that Iculus is looking down on everyone and singing metaphorically. I did not realize, I'm fully admitting this, I did not realize that Possum is sung from the perspective of Iculus. I just thought it was this like metaphorical symbol of your end is in the road, things repeat, the cycle repeats itself. The idea that is actually Iculus singing it, how can you hate that song, RJ? He's muted. He's so in shock over.
I think that Trey made that up on the spot.
It seemed like it. I didn't remember.
It seems very convenient for you to say that, as well as it seems convenient.
Well, because Jeff wrote it, so like it was like, hey Jeff, could you do me a favor and write me a blues song from the perspective of Iculus that's more like philosophical? So I don't really buy it.
The Leonard Skinner tune, but
it's not.
But it makes it better though. It makes it better. It makes it a better song.
Yes.
I just Trey has a.
I was strike one
memory.
for Jeff, and then you enjoy myself with strike two. It's like I'm not even waiting for strike three. I'm gone.
Megan, what do you got?
Yeah, I loved listening back to this. I think one thing that really stood out to me, especially right away in McGrupp, was just how already this band can play with silence in a way that they would become so masterful at. But in McGrupp, they bring this bar down to like complete silence and play this really beautiful, stunning music. Again, Paige is just so beautiful. And when they come into the narration, what Paige is doing on the piano, and I just feel like not many young bands can play with silence in that way. It's always like bigger, louder, faster, tighter. And to be softer, quieter, and more delicate just really stood out to me when I listened back to this version. Like this band that was so young can play so delicately. And it was just really exciting to hear that and to realize that that was with them so early on. I really loved listening to the story in kind of its pure version, I guess, since this is the beginning, and thinking about how much darker Trey's kind of worldview is. I think I hadn't really thought about that until you were saying that, Brian. And it's so interesting because now Trey is so love and light. It's so funny that he didn't want to end the story in a bad way in 2024, 2023. But here he's totally fine to do that. And even the sloth, like when I was listening to that, that was my one big issue with the MSG show too, was the sloth. Amazing, like scene stealer for sure. But he seemed kind of nice. And like the sloth is supposed to be like that dirty, creepy guy in the corner, like the meanest guy in Gamehendge, like the slimy, like hitting on young girls. And like, he's like the dirty guy. He's like the bad guy. And so like to see the sloth look kind of like sweet and funny and not be able to kill Wilson, I didn't really get that because the song is like about how awful he is. But I loved listening back and hearing this version where the sloth is like, just, that like awful person and that awful creature. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was fun to listen to a band also just like leaning into what everybody in the band does so well. I think especially Paige stood out, like you were saying, Brian, just hearing him, he sounds amazing here. Mike's vocals sound amazing. And I loved listening to Possum and Antelope at the end there and hearing that explosion after like such a tight kind of, I wouldn't say tight, like the songs aren't played perfectly, but they're played softly and like with patience. And I think to have that like big Possum and Antelope at the end and just feel them like explode with joy was really fun. And Trey sounds amazing, like flying all over his guitar. And I just kept thinking like this band has not that great of equipment and they deserve better.
Okay. I think that what's notable to me about this is just the risk that they're taking. There's a couple of moments in here where Trey almost like feels. I think I can feel Trey feeling like he might like lose the audience at a couple points.
Yeah,
like there's one point where he's like, "This wait, this is a really important part," and you're like, "Yeah, this could really go off the rails." Yeah, and you're right, Megan. He does.
Wait, this next slide is really cool, guys.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But they do like they keep the keep the energy. I think that the Mockingbird is musically just so great, great. And so I think there's some moments here where imagine just being there, not knowing that, like knowing who they are, but not knowing that much about them, and maybe not knowing the story at all. It's like, you hear that Mockingbird solo, and then you'd be like, okay, this is pretty cool. But the rest of it, you might be like, I don't know what the fuck he's talking about. Just play some music. But there are moments that really deliver.
The second performance of Mockingbird ever.
It's crazy.
I mean, that's
you speak about that. I've just noticed this is a Saturday night. This is a Saturday night in the middle of the second semester at the end of winter after a Frank Zappa show. And they were deciding to tell a story to their audience.
I think that's why he went over. I think that's why he overdid it with the narration, because if you listen to Zappa loves to pontificate on stage.
He felt like he could.
It's also like their second set. So they've played their like beer and lifestyle music,
right?
Phish's version of that kind of set, the party set. And so now, like, okay, they took 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and they've come back, and whoever's left, they're going to get what they get. And, we're going to try to keep you interested. We're going to play some cool songs, but I'm going to tell you, we're going to do some things. And maybe you were at the Zappa show too. And as to your point, Steven, maybe you understand what it's like to be spoken to as the music kind of shapes and happens.
Right.
Well, also, Steven, I think you can hear, I think his voice sounds, well, I think it did in this era generally, but his voice sounds sort of Zappa-like. At points in this. And so you can kind of hear that. Steven, what's your thought about the show?
Well, I kind of put this show with the New Year's Eve show, and what really I felt was the most amazing part is how they did the costumes. Like, I don't know if you listened to the Undermine show about the origins of Phish and talked about the bread and puppet shows.
I did.
And how Phish like really wanted to create that childlike whimsy in their music, because that's where Phish comes from. I mean, if they really wanted to, they wouldn't, but if they really wanted to, they could have like hammied up these costumes. You could have had like holograms of Colonel Forbin. You could have done all these technological advancements, and yet they stuck to their origins, and they really did it how you would do like a show out in Vermont with the Bread and Puppet show. So that really blew my mind, how they really stuck to their origins. And, the narration, yes, was important there, but I think Trey and the band wanted the music and the performance of the puppets to showcase what Gamehendge is all about.
Yeah, I think the change in the narrative is also a little bit, it's not just Trey's different perspective as an older person, but I'm sure that's clearly a part of it, but also it was a little bit of committee. It was written and designed. The whole event was designed by a group, and so they hashed out that script as a little bit of a collective.
Did a good job.
And they absolutely did.
Like I don't think you want as much talking on New Year's Eve. You want the music to do the talking.
Yeah,
right. And they did a good job of kind of drawing some of that down, showing it instead of telling it, and then and relying on the audience to know the material. Which, if it were just a straight Broadway show, you can't. You have to present the material, but we know it. Or maybe we're in the wrong room. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, you let the you let the jam out of AC/DC Bag kind of tell the story of all the battles that are happening and the evil nature of that, how dark it must have felt to be in Gamehendge at that point in time. And you see the multi-beast coming in, and like it gives you it, to your point, it tells you what's going on within the overall music. It's great.
I wanted to just quickly, before we wrap up this episode, we haven't actually mentioned the fact that Phish announced a festival and put tickets on sale since we last recorded. So we probably should say that.
They announced it like 8 months ago or some ridiculous amount of time, right?
They are relying on us to promote their events, okay?
I
know. Need us.
I'm sorry. Let me check my mailbox.
I didn't get 16 "Are you going to Montegrin" emails this week. Did you guys?
Nope. No,
I got texts too.
It's only on the only on the podcast.
I got the T-shirt. Not even gonna go. T-shirt available.
So Steven, as we wrap up here, I just want to give you a chance to kind of like anything else you want to say to the world as they kind of dig into this project, this really amazing project that you you put together?
Yeah, I think once you jump in, you're not. It's gonna be really hard to get out because it is. It's just to see a band. The best thing about this, and I'm so lucky that I got to be a part of this band experience, is that what I think makes Phish so great is their story, is what brought them from a regular house band in Burlington, Vermont, to Carrie to be one of the most influential jam bands in the 20th and 21st century. I mean, just for them to see all the chances that they took, the tours that they did, you get to see, how they went from bar to bar as nobodies, and you get to see that they perform at, Big Cypress, in the middle of a swamp and an Indian reservation, and they bring in thousands and thousands. I mean, it's just really cool to check all this out, and I really hope that people can go in there and just go in a slideshow and just jump from show to show just to see the progression, or I want to see the involvement and see if it's worth it.
I think it's very much worth it. This is going to be a resource that I go back to pretty regularly. I hope that listeners out there check this out. We will be posting the links because it's amazing stuff. You did great work.
Awesome. I feel very proud of it.
Yeah, man. Thank you. And thanks for
awesome.
doing this.
Yeah, it's so really amazing.
Yeah,
really
anytime.
cool. Really cool. I'm going to post the links to each of those folders that you sent, or each of the hyperlinks, and people will be able to check that out. Guys, I think we're going to be back next week with one more audience pick, and it's someone who asked to be on the show long ago, and so we're going to
allow that to happen.
Well, yes.
Okay. If you yell at us enough, right?
Exactly.
Sometimes.
Or you do something amazing like what Steven did. Those are the two options.
If you want to do a project like this that takes 3 years, you're on.
It only took 3 years. That's fine.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, I do think if you do a project and it takes more than 1 year, you're automatically in. But if you do a project that takes 4 months, whatever. Anyone can do that. But seriously, Steven, this is amazing, and keep us posted on how people are interacting with it and what kind of feedback you're getting.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to hear if anybody reaches out to me with hey, this is amazing. I really feel like people are going to reach out to me and be like, hey, this one is wrong. This is the wrong. There's a Phish fan, so fix this right now. And
they'll find the problems. Yeah, they will.
Let me
evergreen content. We'll fix it. It's totally fine.
Let me write
None
that
of us have
email
ever
for you.
experienced that. Don't worry.
No, not at all.
Philly Civic Center no longer exists. It's a hospital or something now. So you can look for it, but it's not the same.
Exactly. Well, Steven, thank you again for joining, and for everyone else watching and listening, thank you all.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
So that is the official end. But for all of you who are watching, Steven, we're going to let you go, but we're going to do a quick bonus segment for the people watching and for actually, Steven, if you want to stay, you can. We're going to talk about our quick Phish predictions for 2024.
Okay. So I booked time for you, so I'm here to stay. I'm gonna relish in it.
Okay. All right. So all right. We're going to do this fast. It's going to be a little bit of a speed round table. I don't know, something. Brian, what's going to happen in 2024?
Phish is going to play in Mexico and at the Sphere and at a festival.
That's not what I'm looking for.
I know. All right. I think that this year, and I'm going to be as optimistic as I can possibly be. This is the even year, the curse of the even year. It's always a transition, and we all know there's good stuff within the transition, but it's always ends up being the transition. But I think that the sound that the band found towards the end of 2023 really caters to full band jamming, and I don't think that we're going to hear a shocking change that is going to upend where the band is at. I'm probably going to be proven wrong night one in Mexico, but I don't think there's going to be a shocking change in the band's sound. They're going to continue this kind of slow motion evolution as they have gotten really, really comfortable playing within this kind of industrialized, spacious, noise-based sound that really defined Spring last year, defined parts of MSG, defined 2021, obviously. But obviously with Mike stepping up into, a really good place throughout 2023. I think that we're going to go into 2024 with the band shifting and evolving, but not in a dramatic sense that kind of throws things off.
I think they're going to do all a cappella sets in Mexico and at the Sphere. No, actually, I tend to agree
Acapella
with
jam.
Ryan. We have been so closely tracking what they've done in the past couple years, just this past year on the show, that I think that it's really, I think that more of what they're doing, gradually shifting, gradually building, is the safe bet, and I think it's a good bet. Um, I am looking for new material, and my big flag in the ground is we're going to finally get Epitaph.
Oh,
The rumored song is going to actually happen, and I think it's going to be about 70-30 love it versus hate it, and to those 30, I see you.
is Epitaph Phish's version of Infrastructure Week? We just
Maybe.
always hear that it's coming, but it never actually happens.
That is
I hope
good.
not.
That's a deep cut, Brian.
I like it.
Just preparing
Megan,
for 2025.
Megan, what do you got, Megan?
Well, perfect timing because incredible perps comment. I was thinking about the new album and I'm wondering if it's going to be a lot of these songs that they debuted this year. We have 10 new originals that debuted this year. Things like Life Saving Gone, Oblivion, The Well, all those songs, which turned out to be huge jam vehicles. So I'm really curious to how they're going to sound in the studio. And I'm also wondering if that's going to include new music as well that we haven't heard yet. So I'm
My
really
bet is
excited
that we're
about
going to
that.
a bit of both.
Oh, the split. Yeah, that's what I'm hoping
Yeah.
too. And, Phish is always better when they have new music. So I'm with you, Jonathan, on that one. I'm curious because they have a lot of these big things going on this year with the Sphere and the festival. Those take a lot of time and energy. And so I'm not sure if that will mean they'll do a Halloween show or not. And if they don't, I always think they tend to do better in years they have a Halloween show just because they usually are making new music or they're covering something that's exciting. And so I feel like without that, sometimes, there's a struggle to that. But I think definitely they sounded really inspired and really well rehearsed over the New Year's run. So I'm excited that even though the even years tend to be a drought sometimes or just lesser, I'm hoping that this year has some really, really strong moments. And I think with all the new music that we're going to have some really good jamming this year.
Steven, what do you got?
Well, I'm anticipating what the Sphere is going to be like, because it's going to be something they have not done ever in terms of their performance. I mean, you have Kuroda who does all the lights, and this is going to be completely different. So I'm curious as to see what kind of performance, what kind of, is it going to be animation? Is it going to be mix? It's going to be, how's the jam going to relate to the lights? How's the jam going to relate to that? Because I think that's going to affect their performances too.
To video, because
Right.
they've never really performed. They're not Pink Floyd. They don't have video happening around them.
Yeah.
Aside from the drive-in jam or the
Correct.
Right. Rare
hourglass
exceptions.
jams.
Right.
Yeah.
Are we
it's
just
not
going to get
Phish's
something like
form.
that? Or,
Yeah. Just
Yeah,
imagine if you're hearing a mothership jam, and this huge mothership starts coming, and people are going to lose their minds. So I'm just curious to see how they're going to accommodate to the Sphere performances.
Yeah, that's fair. I think I think we talked about this before, and maybe this isn't really a prediction, but I feel like this new touring kind of structure is going to be more solidified this year with
Yeah.
like a
Segments.
little April, shorter summer, maybe a little run at the end of October or something. But it feels like we're moving more toward residencies and runs, maybe not in
Totally.
the traditional sense, but that's what it feels like.
Certainly for this year, I think strong chance. I would bet Halloween's out, given the other big
Seems like it,
production
right?
shows they have this year. But anything is possible. It's Phish, so don't get too cozy in your predictions, I think is a very good advice for Phish fans.
Well, can I bring in one last thing here? A listener question or listener prediction. Toph B says more Type 2 jams for non-traditional Type 2 songs. So I want to ask everyone, rapid fire. What is your non-traditional jam vehicle that you would love to see jammed out in 2024?
Bouncing.
Yeah, kind of.
I was going to say bouncing too. God damn it.
I think we've all been hanging out together too much. Steve, give us something different.
I would probably maybe one of their like, imagine doing like a slow tune like Shade, you know, just like a slow little ballad that just kind of like delicately trickles out into some amazing soft mellifluous jam, and then they just elevate it. Like, how amazing would that be?
A ballad jam. Hell yeah.
Maybe
they did that one
30-minute waiting all night.
That would be beautiful. They did that one. Two Versions of Me turned into a jam from the Numbers show that was really cool. Thunderhead at Dick's turned into a jam. So yeah, ballad jams. Let's get a Lifeboy jam that really sounds like the feeling of
they've done everything. You know, why not?
Yeah, yeah.
Anything's possible.
Anything's possible. Okay. Jam demand, you cowards. All right. I think we did it, guys.
Awesome.
Done.
Have a good 2024, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.